Shalom, this is Levi Shore. Welcome back to Swing Good Torah. So there's a very special 10-day period which starts on Rosh Hashanah and it ends on Yom Kippur, and it's called the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, the 10 Days of Teshuvah. And we're going to learn today what is this very special 10 days and what are we trying to do in these 10 days. So one thing we're doing is we're beginning the new year, and the new year, everything is now fresh. The new year starts, and we have an opportunity to completely change who we were from the last year and become someone much greater. And we can live on a higher spiritual level. And this 10 days can really help us set the pattern to correct what we felt like our shortcomings in the past year and to elevate us much, much higher. And it's really incredible time, incredible opportunity. And one of our main goals is we want to be written in the book of life, like we want to be inscribed for life for another year. And then we want to start becoming who we want to be in this new year. So let's take a look at something very interesting here. Let me bring it up on the screen. So what is the nature of our soul? And what are these 10 days connected to? So one of the things that the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, the 10 days of Teshuvah, are connected to is they're connected to these 10 spheros. Now these spheros, these are what makes up our soul. This is what makes up our neshama. And the Sfas Emes, he says something very incredible. He says Rosh Hashanah, the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, and then the third day of Yom Kippur, they're attached to the three highest spheros. Now, the three highest spheros of Keser, Chakma, which is wisdom, and Bina, which is understanding, this is what gives us the power to think. It's called Machshava, the power of consciousness. So this is all our thought processes. And what we can do is we can begin to heal and clear our thoughts. So we're having holier thoughts, more spiritually elevated thoughts. And we're connecting more with our soul, our neshama, than the physical desire. So we wanted to rise spiritually. We have to get more connected to our soul, who our real essence is. And these 3 days of Rosh Hashanah, so on Rosh Hashanah, the first thing we do is there's an important mitzvah where we proclaim that Hashem's the king, right? The melech of the world, of the universe. And we have a very special mitzvah of listening to the shofar. And the sounds of the shofar, and one of the sounds is the teruah, the shavarim, is this crying, broken sound. And then it's surrounded by this beautiful sound of kindness, of rachamim, of compassion, of the tekiah. So we have all our sorrow, all our sadness of, our shortcomings, where we went wrong. And then that's like in between, it's sweetened. So the whole thing is sweetening the din, sweetening the judgment. So we have, the famous minhag of dipping the apples in the honey. We want a good and sweet new year. And through these 3 days, so for Rosh Hashanah, we can begin to clear up our thought process and have holier thoughts and more elevated thoughts. And then that's completed on Yom Kippur, when we can get complete atonement, kapara, and we can really elevate our thought process. Now then, the other 7 days are connected to the seven lower spheros, and the seven lower spheros are our midos. These are our emotions, and this is what, we want to now do a masake, we want to fix our emotions and have everything balanced, and now we can connect much closer to Hashem. So what happens is through these 10 spheros, there can flow the chayos, the life force, and it can flow the shefa of the or Ein Sof, this infinite light can come through, and we can have spiritual elevation. We can actually, through learning the Torah, which is the Eitz Chaim, which is the tree of life, we can actually receive a great amount of the spiritual flow. And then the mitzvos, which the Torah teaches us how to do, they will increase this flow, and they'll start to remove the blockages, which are called the klipos, and they block the light from flowing through the structure. So we'll talk about that soon. On each one of these lower 7 days, they're also connected to a day of the week. So in the creation of the world was created, the first day of creation was connected to chesed, to kindness, and the world, was filled with kindness. And then we have the second day, Gevurah, then we have Tiferes, we have Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and finally the seventh of the lower spheros is Malchus, kingship, and this is related to Shabbos. And we'll talk about the very special and holy quality of Shabbos. So the journey we want to take on these 10 days is we want to go from the lower crown when we proclaim Hashem the Melech, the King, on Rosh Hashanah, and then we want to elevate ourselves all the way up to Yom Kippur, where we can reach the highest spiritual level of Keser, of the crown. So it's very interesting. So in Yom Kippur, we're considered like Malachim because we detach ourselves from all the physical desires. We don't eat, we don't drink, you don't anoint with oil, anything pleasurable for the body. We don't wear leather shoes. We don't engage in relations, marital relations. So we start to disconnect ourselves from the physical, and then we can become pure spiritual beings, and we have the ability to get forgiven, for the Averos, Chas v'Shalom, for the mistakes we've made where we've, fell short. Sometimes we've given in. We'll talk about where we've been seduced by the Yetzer Hara, and now we can be forgiven for all that. We can correct all that, and then incredibly enough, through these 10 days, through Teshuvah, which means returning to Hashem, we can actually, if done properly, if done out of akava, if done out of love, if the Teshuvah is done out of love, we can actually turn an avera, a sin, into a mitzvah, which is just an incredible concept. And this is a very important thing that Hashem created even before the whole creation of the universe. Teshuvah was such an important thing for mankind to be able to exist that we needed this ability to Teshuvah. Okay, so let me bring this back up here. Okay, so we're talking about something very special. So Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, they were created on the sixth day of creation, and it was Rosh Hashanah. So Adam and Chava, they ate from the Eitz Das Tov Ra, from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And then this, unfortunately, brought into the world a mixture of Tov Ra, of good and evil. And now good and evil became, or especially evil, became like something internal to a person, where before it was like an external force. So now we have a battle. So we have thoughts constantly running through our head. And some of these thoughts are given to us by the Yetzer Hara, the evil impulse. And that's trying to seduce us, is trying to see, it's trying to like hide the fact that doing bad, doing an Avera is bad for us. It tries to make it seem like it's good, like it's actually a mitzvah itself. It tries to trick us into doing, something that the Torah, says not to do. And then we're waging this constant war. And then what we want to do is we want to be choosing the thoughts and the advice of the Yetzer Tov, of the good impulse. So the way we can strengthen the Yetzer Tov, the good impulse, is by holding on to the Eitz Chaim, holding on to the tree of life. So let me just bring it back again here, and we'll take a look at this for a second. It's very interesting. So this arrangement of the 10 Sephiros in the shape of a person, this is what's called the Tselem Elokim. This is the image of God. We are made in this image of God, and it refers to this makeup of our soul. And then there's 5 levels of spiritual elevation that these 10 spheros make up. So we have the lowest level, like the physical world, the world of Asiya. The next 6, or higher spiritual world, the world of Yetzirah. This is called the world of the Malachim, the world of the angels. It's Shemayim, it's the heavens. It's the world, a higher spiritual world. When we look up into the sky at night, we see the planets and the stars. And it's a higher spiritual world. Then it goes even higher than that, and it goes into the world of Beriah, the world of creation. And this is where Hashem's Kisei Kavod is, and it's surrounded by all his malachim that are serving him. And the world of creation is so high spiritually, it cannot be seen physically, right? So this is a purely spiritual world which can't be perceived. Like you can't look through the telescope and see this high spiritual world. And then even a world above that is the next level of elevation. And these are the five levels also of our soul. The world of Atzilus is like the emanation, the radiation from the essence of Hashem. And then finally, the highest spiritual world of Adam Kadmon, this the shape of a man permeates the whole universe. And so what it means for all of us is we have our own soul, we have our own neshama, and then there's a higher spiritual version of us, the completed version, which we'll talk about soon. And that's our goal for all of life. We want to achieve and become this completed person that we can be, like the greatest spiritual being that we can become. And that's one of the main missions in our life is to become the spiritual being. You know, we want to be as great as this spiritual image of us above. Now, also, this pattern, besides being called the Selam Elohim, it's also called the tree of life, the Eitz Chaim. And this shape of the 10 spheros, and then they break down into 10 spheros themselves, which we're not going to go so much into right now. But this is the shape of the universe, and this is the shape of every person's soul. And we are called a little universe. We're called an Olam Katan. So we're all a little universe, and we're connected to the big universe. All right, so like we said before, so Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, unfortunately, they brought this evil into themselves on Rosh Hashanah. Now, what was incredible is on the sixth day, Shabbos, the seventh day, still hadn't been created yet. So Shabbos is untouched by this hate, by the sin of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's untouched, and it Hashem blessed it. So it's a day of blessing, a day of bracha, and Hashem made it holy. So it's a day of kedusha, the special spiritual energy that fills that day that that we can tap into. And then it's the day that Adam Arishon began teshuvah, began to return to Hashem. So it's a day that has great power in these 10 days. Shabbos Shuvah can also help us greatly, like return to Hashem and elevate ourselves much higher spiritually than we can even during the week. So Hashem says a very interesting thing after Adam and Chava eat from the tree of knowledge. And the pasuk says, "Vayomer Hashem Elokim." So Hein Hadam Haya Ke'achad Mimeno. So Hashem Elokim, both aspects of this infinite being, both aspects of the Ein Sof, the infinite one. Hashem, the aspect when he deals with us in loving kindness, and the aspect of Elokim when he judges the world and deals with us in din and judgment. So the full aspect of compassion, of kindness, of din. So a full expression of Hashem in the world. He says, "Behold, man has become like one of us." Now, who's one of us? So what it means is that Hashem's the Melech, he's the king, and he's talking to his royal court. He's talking to the Malachim. And he says, "L'das tov v'ra," like he now knows good and evil. V'ata pen yishlach yado v'lakach gam me'etz hachayim. And now, lest he put forth his hand, so shalach yado, send out his hand, v'lakach gam, and then take also from the tree of life, and then v'achal v'chai leolam, and then eat it and live forever. All right, so it sounds very strange. Why is Hashem so concerned with Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve eating from the tree of life? So the problem now is the original plan is that they would only eat from the tree of life, and the tree of life is the Torah. So they would see and perceive the world through the Torah which Hashem wrote, and that is Hashem's vision of the world. And then we can see the world through Hashem's eyes and Hashem's view and Hashem's goals, his ratzon, what is his will, why did he create the world, what's the purpose of the world, and we see it clearly. But unfortunately, when they ate from the tree of knowledge, then now the perception is distorted, because now we can be misled by the Yetzer Hara. We have this internal force that can lead us, seduce us. It can, and now we're more attached to our bodies, and we're more susceptible to the physical desires, and we can get more rooted and lowered in this physical world. And then it's harder to elevate ourselves and connect with the spiritual beings that we really are. So Rashi says something interesting. So Rashi says on this, he says, see now that he is unique in the lower worlds, talking about Adam and Chava, talking about mankind, as I am unique in the upper worlds. And we talked about these higher spiritual worlds, and then Hashem's an infinite being. He permeates all the worlds and beyond. And even beyond the universe, Hashem is infinite, is everywhere. So, and what is his unity, his yechidaso, to know good and evil, which is not true with the animals. So we have this higher perception. We have das, we have knowledge. We talked about before. We have chachma and bina, wisdom and understanding. So the problem now is because evil is internal to a person, that has to be broken, and it wouldn't benefit us to live forever now while we're in this damaged state. So the whole goal of mankind, and this is finally going to be done in the age of Mashiach, in the days of Mashiach, where mankind is going to heal and fix what was broken from eating the tree of knowledge. And then after when Mashiach teaches the Jewish people, and the Jewish people serve as an example for the whole world, then we can finally fix what was broken in mankind, and we can finally expel the Yetzer Hara from inside us, and then now we can fully eat from the Eitz Chaim, the tree of life, and now it's going to help us to live forever. When there's no more evil inside of us, and there's only Tov inside of us, only good, now you want to lock that in, and then we want to live forever. All right, so it's very interesting. So the Sfas Emes is going to say something amazing about attaching ourselves to the Eitz Chaim, to the tree of life, and showing how we can start to heal what was broken. So he expounds on this part of the pasuk, part of the verse. He says, "Ve'ata pen yishlak yado," because that he may, now, he may send out his hand, gam me'etz chayim, and he may take, also from the tree of life. Until it's not good to do that until everything's fixed. So the Sfas Emes says something very interesting here. He says that the root of Adam and all of mankind is rooted in Gan Eden, is rooted in the Garden of Eden. And the pasuk he brings from Bereshit, from Genesis, he says, "V'yasem sham es hadam," and he placed man there, right in the Garden of Eden. But through the hate, through like disobeying Hashem's command, through disobeying Hashem's mitzvah to not eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge, he was driven out of Gan Eden. Now, here's where it's really incredible what the Sfas Emes says. He says, with the koach, with the strength, with the power of teshuvah that Hashem created as a way that when we stumble, when we make mistakes, unfortunately, chas v'shalom, when we do averas, when we don't live up to the greatness that we can be, when we fall short, when we get too rooted in our physical desires, Hashem gave us teshuvah, and it has this amazing power, and it gave him the power to hold on to the Eitz Chaim, to the tree of life. So what does it mean when it says Ve'ata, and now? So now is the aspect of teshuvah. So what's the Yetzer Hara always trying to get us to do? The Yetzer Hara wants us to believe in machar, tomorrow. Oh, I'll be better tomorrow. I'll be good tomorrow. I'll do what I'm supposed to do tomorrow. And that is how we fall into the trap. But if we're in the ata, if we're in the now, now's the time to do teshuvah. Now's the time to spiritually elevate ourselves. Now's the time to do something better. Now's the time, to learn Torah, to do mitzvah. So if we're in the now, if we're present and not being seduced by the Yetzer Hara to live in the, tomorrow, that's the true power. That's teshuvah. He said that's the aspect of teshuvah, living in the moment, fully being in the moment is the power of teshuvah. And then he says, "V'yishlach yado," he sent out his hand. So what does that mean? So this is the koach, this is the strength, umakomo. So it's a strength and its place. Like we all have a place in the world. And we have to be, like we said before, we want to reach our highest, aspect of ourselves. So then, yado, it's the same letters as the word yud, which means 10, right? The gematria, the numerical value of Yud is 10. So it's teaching us when do we have the strength, real power to send out our hand and attach ourselves to the Eitz Chaim, attach ourselves to the Torah. It's in these Aseret Yemei Teshuvah. It's in these 10 days of Teshuvah. Now, Avraham Avinu, Abraham, it's written that it also says with him, but Yishlach Abraham es yado. Hashem sent out, Abraham sent out his hand. Now, what is this in reference to? This is reference to the Akedah. Hashem commanded Abraham that he should sacrifice Yitzhak. And this was the most heartbreaking thing that Abraham could ever hear. He waited 100 years for his son. He spent his son Yitzhak, Isaac. He spent his whole life. Abraham and Sarah, they spent their whole lives like trying to teach the world of Hashem that there's one infinite being that's created all of mankind, that loves all mankind, and we shouldn't be led astray, like getting into foolish things, like for instance, worshiping idols, false ideas of the world, have a true perception of Hashem in the world. And he was Moser Nefesh. He was willing to give up his own life, but for him to pass this Nisayon, this great test of the Akedah, where Abraham was the essence of chesed, of kindness, and now Hashem was asking Abraham to trust in him so much, to trust in the love and compassion and kindness of Hashem so much, to even sacrifice his son if Hashem commanded him. And that goes against Abraham's complete understanding of Hashem, the understanding of the world. He waited 100 years for this miracle birth of his son, and now he would have no one to carry on his teachings and no one to carry on his life's mission, what he dedicated his whole life to uniting the world through a clear vision of there's only one infinite being that's created us all, and there's one infinite being that is running the world, and that is what can unite the whole world. And the illusions of the Yetzer Hara is what separates the world. And the deeper people fall into Avera, and deeper they sink into their own physical desires, they get more selfish, and they become less like Hashem. Hashem is in the infinite being. There's nothing you can give to Hashem. Hashem only gives. Hashem created the universe, and he gives us life, and that's what we're asking for during this special time. We're asking for another year of life. And he was willing, because of his emunah, because of his trust in Hashem, he was willing to basically just uproot his whole life and just, it would all go away and it would be worthless. But he had the belief that Hashem is good. So then Hashem tells him, right, I don't want you, to sacrifice your son. And then Hashem gives him a ram instead. And that's very special midrash that says that the left horn of that ram was the shofar that was blown at the Matan Torah, at the giving of the Torah of Mount Sinai. And so the Torah, the Eitz Chaim, is connected to hearing the shofar blast of the left side, the left shofar, the left horn of the ram. And then the right horn of the ram, that's the shofar of Mashiach. That's going to be the shofar Gadol, the great shofar blown to signal to the world that Hashem is going to send Mashiach. And Mashiach is going to be he's going to lead the world to the final correction of what happened with Adam and Chava in the Garden of Eden with the tree of knowledge. So what happened is Abraham, he went above the Teva. He went above like what we call nature, the laws of physics. He went way beyond how like the average person acts. The average person a lot of times is seduced and led by his own physical desires. And Abraham went way beyond his own selfish desires to follow the will and the command of Hashem. And then he elevated himself so far above the natural world with the physical world. So then he was able to nis aches, to grab onto the Eitz Chaim, the tree of life. Now Chazal, the rabbis, they expound this idea. The Elokim nisa es Abraham. That Elokim, he tested Abraham, he tested Abraham. And they said that he was able to ascend and go above the Teva. He was able to go out of the Teva, go out of any constraint of time and space. So then it comments, it's written also with Yosef, with Joseph. It says, Yosef vayanas vayetze hachutza. And with Joseph, and then he fled and he went out. He went outside. So what does this mean? So Joseph faced the ultimate test in physical desires. Here, the wife of Potiphar, this beautiful, extremely beautiful, you know, aristocratic, sorry, the royal wife of Potiphar. She had beauty, probably no one could resist. And Yosef was on the brink of giving in. And then he saw an image of his father. He saw an image of his father Yaakov, and that reattached him to all the holiness of Jacob. And he was able to resist this great temptation. And then he also was able to now break out of all the constraints of time and space. He went to such a high spiritual level that he was no longer just, in the physical world. He saw great perception now of the world. So the word vayanas, it has the same nun samik as nisa, as test. So this is a remez, is a hint to the nisa, to the test of Abraham. They were very similar. They went way beyond the bounds of what a normal person does. They broke free of any of their own personal desires, any like selfish beliefs they held, and they were able to completely give themselves over to the Ratzon of Hashem, what Hashem wanted. So the thing is, the Ratzon of Hashem, we don't always see it, but Hashem's the infinite being that created us all, and Hashem gave us the Torah, and this will give us a good life. But unfortunately, like we said before, when we have this internal Yetzer Hara trying to deceive us and mislead us, we can somehow think like the darkness and evil is good, and then we go down wrong paths. So what Hashem gave us the Torah to then give us clarity, the tree of life, of what really is good in life, and what's going to bring us closer to Hashem, and what's going to attach us to good, and what's going to help us stay away from evil. So even before it's written Hakutza, so the Yotze Oso Hakutza. So before we saw Hashem take Abraham out of time and space, when Hashem was making the bris bein basarim, the covenant between the parts. It was the first covenant between Abraham and Hashem, and this became the covenant of the whole Jewish people. And Hashem took Abraham outside of the universe, really, outside of time and space, and he showed him all of history. He showed him what the covenant was going to achieve. So the first time, it's really Hashem that took Abraham above the heavenly sphere, outside of time and space. Now, what's so incredible, the Sfas Emes is teaching here, it's now that Abraham elevated himself. So what is so special about these 10 days of Teshuvah is, first, we can correct every day of the week. We can reconnect ourselves to the 7 days of creation. We can clear and clear out our thoughts and start to have holier thoughts, more spiritual thoughts, less being led and thinking about just the physical desires. And then we can also balance our emotions, the 7 lower spheros, the 7 lower midos, and then each day can be fixed. Whatever day, wherever we stumbled on that day, we can live that day now at a higher spiritual level. So the 10 days begin on Rosh Hashanah, and then it concludes on Yom Kippur, and then we have the final shofar blast, at the end of the Ne'ilah. So B'ezrat Hashem, may we finish this Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, this 10 days of Teshuvah, and then we hear the shofar gadol, we hear the great shofar. It's indicating such a great job we did, and just our longing to be led by Mashiach and to teach us, how to learn the Torah at its deepest level, how to do the mitzvos, and bring us higher and higher up in spiritual elevation, and bring us closer and closer to Hashem, and then finally we can get closer to that shalom, that the world peace that everyone so desired for so long. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to see you back again on Sweet and Good Torah, and everyone should have a Gemar, a Gemar Chasima Tova. Have a good sealing in the book of life, and I hope to see you back again soon on Sweet and Good Torah.